Good morning. No text.
Just mute ourselves.
Was I was exploring over the internet, and I actually found a setting of a Chad Sha'alti by Dan Singer for a solo voice, which I tried to arrange a little bit for viola. So maybe some of you are familiar with it. I was not. It's a lovely setting. It feels like a waltz almost. So this is Dan Singer's setting of a Chad Sha'alti.
Adria, that was spectacular. I don't know that setting. I'm going to look for it. Does Dan sing it on a in a
I
YouTube
couldn't
somewhere?
find a recording of him singing it, but
Wow,
I'm
that's
going to email
gorgeous.
him, and
Yeah,
I think it's lovely. And
it's beautiful.
you know,
I have to say, listening to you and just how much I miss hearing live performance of music. It's which is such a deep part of my life. What a gift, Adria, you give me and all of us. It's
well,
just
I mean,
incredible.
the chorus recording is spectacular, and
Yeah,
I mean, we're all suffering
yeah.
from, well, either from the aspect of listening, or for me and for many of us playing with other people. I will admit to having gotten together with, some of you know Lisa and Cebu and
Uh-huh.
Tomoko, and we're socially distant and we play with a mask, and but it stinks.
Yeah. It does. That just
The Brooklyn definition is that it stinks.
yeah. It
So
indeed it does. Indeed it does. So and here we are on and I think I said this to you, Harold, yesterday. I can't remember. Was it were you and I talking about it? And if it weren't for COVID-19, we're now in week, what is this, 25 of studying Psalms together. And so many of you have learned some Hebrew. Many of you have relationships now with this Sefer Tehillim that you could not have imagined before. So isn't it weird to have this is only a result of our being in our homes every day, all day. And I'm so grateful for it. And before we go back to Psalm 27, I asked Randy Sarakoff if she would share with us a little bit about her relationship. Some of the Psalms we encounter, none of you, I bet, have even seen them before. And some of them are very well known. And this Psalm 27 is well known for members of our synagogue because of that we sing the Achat Sha'alti and we recite it through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But I've asked Randy to talk a little bit about it. And this is a picture of Randy with Renee Gutman, our beloved guide, who has guided every one of our CBST trips to Israel, except for the one with the families with kids. And this is our standing on the steps of the south entrance. Ira, did you take this photo? There it is. So those are the steps leading up. Leave this photo on for a second, because this is fantastic. These are the steps from the city of David. Remember, we looked at some photographs about that teardrop south of the wall, south of the enclosed part of the where the Temple Mount was and where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is, and farther the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are up there. But this is the south wall, and this is where pilgrims would have arrived to the temple in the days of the temple, and where the Psalms of Ascension, Shir Hamalot, which we discussed in other Psalms. Oh, Renee is on the line. Renee is with us today.
What do you
Oh
know?
my God, Renee Goodman, wave hello.
Wow, Renee.
Renee is here with us. Renee, say hello so we can hear you and see you. You'll appear on the screen if we can see you. Where are you, Renee?
Hi, everybody.
Wow,
Hello.
Here's Renee from Jerusalem with us today.
Renee. Oh,
Are you in Jerusalem today?
Unfortunately, I couldn't be with you before. I had some other engagements, but now I intend to be every day with you.
Wow.
So
Well,
happy.
Renee, how fluky is this? The day you join us is there you are in the picture.
I couldn't believe when I saw this picture. I said, what?
That is unbelievable. We could not have planned this better. So here, Renee Goodman, who has been a very dear friend, has guided every single trip since 1996 or 1993 that CBST has taken to Israel, except for the one with the kids. Renee doesn't do the summer trips anymore, and she's in retirement, but comes out of retirement for CBST trips. Renee's originally from France and now lives in Jerusalem. So there she is with the blue coat, describing where we are. Renee, maybe you should describe this. Here you are. Tell us what we're looking at here and how this relates to the Shir Hamalot.
You did it. The Ma'alot, we are sitting on the Ma'alot, which not exactly, because we are sitting outside the temple compound. The temple compound is behind us, behind that big wall. But these were probably similar steps leading to the area where the temple was. And there were 15 steps according to the first 15 songs of the book of Song of Songs. The rest is for you, Rabbi.
Well, I can't believe you're here today, Renee. That's amazing. And many people you know are in the class, so they'll all say hello to you, and we use the chat for people to talk to each other. So we imagine that the Levites, the Leviim, would stand face to face up the steps, and pilgrims might walk between them, and they would sing antiphonally back and forth to each other, perhaps. And maybe even, as we've studied biblical parallelism, that some of the Psalms speak back and forth to each other. Maybe one line of the Levites would sing and the other side would sing back. We imagine that might be what some of the music would have been, that we've talked in great length, Renee, about music relating to the Psalms and to this period. And so that's what, when we talk about Shir Hamalot, the songs of ascent or the songs of ascension, they would have been ascending up these steps to go to the Temple Mount itself. And we imagine, so this is a fantastic photograph. Ira, did you take this picture?
I did, Randy. I did.
Oh, Randy, you took this picture. Okay, the other one with you in it.
I took the picture of Randy reading.
Got it. Okay. So here we are on the temple. Oh, there you are, Ira. I see you and Kenneth there. So of course you didn't take that picture. And for those of you who came on the family with kids trip, you couldn't have imagined wearing the clothes that we're wearing there, because this is November, and Jerusalem in November is quite cold and chilly and damp. When we were there in August, it was anything but cold and chilly and damp. And these steps would have been almost impossible to gather on in the sun for any length of time. So I asked, Renee, we're in Psalm 27. We're up to Psalm 11 in the order. We've been doing this for 25 weeks, and we've finished the first 10 Psalms. But we're skipping now to Psalm 27 because of Elul. But now, Randy, I asked Randy to talk a little bit about her relationship to Psalm 27 before we get back to the text. And there is Randy standing next to Renee reading on the steps.
Thank you, Rabbi. Actually, my first exposure to Psalm 27 was Achat Sha'alti during the days of awe from Elul through the Shabbat after Simchat Torah. And I really enjoyed it, and I started to investigate Psalm 27. And honestly, it was the line about my mother and father forsake me, and you, God, took me in. And it's only been 4 years since my mother and father had abandoned me. So the Psalm 27 really spoke to me. So then fast forward 2018, and in 2018, you started what was the Psalms Project. I think it was Elul of that year, the
Yeah.
Psalms Project started. And everybody was asked if they wanted to participate and read one of the Psalms. And you wanted to have at least 150 people reading Psalms. So as a collective, we would read the book of Psalms every day. And I chose Psalm 27. And this was the November after in 2018 that we did the Israel, I like to call it a learning journey more than a trip, because that's what it was. I brought the CBST translation copy with me, and I had it, and I continued to read it every day. I recall when we went to the city of David, not knowing as much as I do now about Psalms and David and who wrote it, moving into a corner and reading my Psalm and being very touched by it. I don't know if Lisa's on here, but I think she snapped a picture that I never saw, and I'd love to have that. And then we went here that day to the Temple Mount, well, as close as we can get, the Western Wall, the Southern Wall. And when we got to the Southern Wall, you had asked me to read it. And at that time, I did not know why you chose this place. Now I do, as you had explained to everybody else. But here I am with that piece of paper that I carried with me through Israel that had the translation of Psalm 27, you know, from our Friday night Siddur, the CBST one. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And I am so grateful to Ira for capturing that picture. I put this up on Facebook for the month of Elul. This means a lot to me, but it means so much to me that Mickey and I were in the Old City for the first time the day you guys went to Ramallah, which is the day before happened to be our anniversary. And I had wanted to see the Old City. So we went there together, spend some away from the group time. And I was looking for the perfect souvenir. And I walked into a shop, a Jewish shop in the Jewish quarter in the Old City. And there was a sofa, a Torah scribe, right? And put what you want onto this parchment. And I was like, I got to get something. This is the perfect souvenir. And I was like, what should I get? And I had him transcribed Psalm 27, verse 4, Achat Sha'alti, one thing I ask. And he said, it'll be ready tomorrow. And if anyone's been on a trip with Rabbi Kleinbaum, you know there's very little time for souvenirs or shopping or getting into a shop without getting into too much trouble. But you gave us 45 minutes in the Old City that day. And I was able to run in, pick this thing up, and meet the group in time. And here it is. One picture shows it in Israel before I had it framed, and now this hangs in our wall in our dining room. So that's my experience and my connection to Psalm 27. And I'm so glad and grateful that we're doing this in-depth review of Psalm 27 so I could learn even more about it and be even more connected to it. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Randy. And I'm so grateful to you for developing this relationship to it. And you're not alone, that the piece of the Psalm that means a lot to many of our members actually is the Psalm, part of the Psalm, we haven't gotten up to that yet, which talks about a relationship to God even when parents abandon us. And the parental love is used so often to be kind of the perfect love, the love in which there is some kind of just perfection. And some people have that, but many people have not experienced perfection in their love from their parents. And the depth of Judaism, I think, is that it acknowledges that there aren't perfections out there, and that what can exist even when the deepest relationships sometimes disappoint us is a relationship to the source of our soul. So I'm very moved by that, Randy, and thanks so much for sharing it. And the fantastic photographs. And can you believe Renee is here today? So let's go to Psalm 27, and we're now up to line 4. And for those of you who are new to CBST's Psalm class, and I know we have a bunch of people who are new, we kind of do a big review of the Hebrew and English on the Pshat level, and then we'll start examining other translations as we go through, but we're up to verse Daled, verse 4. So let's look at the Hebrew first.
Adria Benjamin volunteered to be our Hebrew reader for
Great,
these
but
couple
we don't have the Hebrew up there yet. Or it's, yeah, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Adria?
Okay. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבוקר בהיקולו.
Beautiful. The Hechalo. Excellent.
Say that again, the last one. I'm sorry.
Behechalo. It's a ch.
Behechalo, sorry.
Behechalo. Remember, we talked about the. Did anybody study in your Hebrew classes this summer about Beged Kefet? That I had discussed when the Dagesh appears and the 6 letters of Beged Kefet and when the Dagesh disappears. So in Heichalo, there's no Dagesh in the Kaf. So it's pronounced with the hard guttural Ch instead of the Dagesh in the Cha, which would be then Heikalo. And why is it with a Dagesh, without a Dagesh? This is for the Gimel level. Did anybody learn this? Why is there no Dagesh in Beheichalo?
Where it is in the syllable, but I can't see.
Right, so the Dagesh for those 6 letters is Berosh Milah Uverosh Havara, in the beginning of the syllable or the beginning of a word. Well, that's the beginning of a syllable. Chalo is the beginning of a syllable. But the exception to the rule that the Dagesh is in the Beged Kefet, Berosh Milah Uverosh Havara, the exception to that rule is if it follows an open, unaccented syllable. Okay, I'll let that go for those, but for those of you who like that, that isn't, hey is an open syllable. So the following following syllable does not get the Dagesh for Beged Kefet. Okay, back to the beginning. So in other words, Adria, that was a very sophisticated mistake to make. So it was not you made a very sophisticated mistake. Good for you. Okay, achat. What does achat mean? One.
Okay,
One.
Okay, class, get ready for the buzzers. I'm looking for
Achat is 1. Achat sha'alti. What's the shoresh of sha'alti? Shin ayin lamed. Shoel, to ask, is a question. She'ela is a question, is the noun. This is
It's an
the
aleph, Rabbi, not an ayin.
what?
It's an aleph, not an ayin.
Oh, did I say ayin? Sorry. It's an aleph, correct. Thank you, Yael. Yes, of course it's an aleph. Shin aleph lamed is the shoresh. She'ela is a question. And this is a very simple verb form. Although there's a very interesting issue here grammatically, but we're going to skip that for now. So one thing I ask or asked, me'et. Me'et, what does min mean? Or the mem in the front of a word?
From.
So from et Hashem. From et Hashem, from Yud He Vav He. And as Harold did the spoiler alert yesterday, you should be counting the times Yud He Vav He appears. It's a lot, and it will, as Harold told us yesterday, add up to 13. And 13 reflects the Yud Gimel Midot, the 13 aspects of God that are the source of our understanding of the deepest level of forgiveness. We'll talk about that again. So one sha'alti, there's no thing, by the way, in the Hebrew, right? So let's just I ask, from Yud He Vav He, Ota Avakesh, Shivti B'Veit Adonai Kol Yemei Chayai. So there's under the Chayai, notice the truck mark, the etnachta. So that's the division for this sentence for purposes of understanding. I ask from Yud He Vav He, Ota Avakesh, that which I seek. Bikesh is to ask for or to seek or to go after. Bakasha is a request. One thing I ask, Shivti, Lashevet is to sit or to live. What? Zarina, did you want to say something? Sorry. So Yashav Shivti, to sit or be seated, Beveit, or to live. Beveit Yud He Vav He, another Yud He Vav He. Beveit, what does be mean as a prefix? In. Beveit Yud He Vav He, Kol Yemei Chayai. Remember Chai, 18, Chai, life, Chayai, my life. Again, you'll notice, and when you heard the Hebrew being read, the emphasis on this personal, Achat Sha'alti, Ot Shivti, Kol Yemei, Chayai. There's a rhythm, and you really feel the personal, that this is not a psalm that's written about something else. It's coming, one of the questions I've talked about, always ask yourself, what is the perspective of the speaker of the psalm? And sometimes they're describing something that happened out there. Sometimes they're talking about something else, or they're giving you advice. But this psalm, along with some, obviously many, but this one is very personal. It's coming from a person. And you always want to ask the question, what's the perspective of the person who's speaking? Is the person feeling good, feeling scared, feeling sad, feeling despairing, feeling anguish, feeling confident? So there's one thing I asked, Kol Yemei Chayai, comma or colon. And what is the one, all this, everything is the leading up to this, ... Lachazot b'noam Yud He Vav He. Look how many times in this verse alone Yud He Vav He appears, 3. And no other uses of God's name here. I mean, no other like Elohim or El or other names of God. This is the big one. Somebody mentioned that they realized in studying Hebrew this summer that there's no verb to be in Hebrew. That's true in modern Hebrew. It's not exactly true as a general rule about Hebrew. We don't have it in modern Hebrew. So if you say, I am walking in Hebrew, the only way to say it is the equivalent of what it would sound like in English, I walking. There, I am sitting in Hebrew, I am standing, ani omed. I am standing, ani omedet. There is no M. It's I standing, I sitting, I walking. There is no to be verb in modern Hebrew. In biblical Hebrew, there is a reference to the to be verb. And the to be verb is the hardest, I think, in languages where it does exist. I think about French, right, Renee? I mean, it's very hard for non-speakers. In English, how much does the to be verb change? Am, are, were. I mean, there's so many different forms of it. I don't know how people learn English. But the place in the Bible where we see the reference to the to be verb that's the most famous and known is when the Yud He Vav He God explains who Yud He Vav He is to Moses for the first time. Yud He Vav He says in this very, very famous line, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I will be what I will be. I mean, ask Yael or Renee or any Israeli. You don't usually use the Ehyeh verb. It does not in modern Hebrew, but that we have this reference to God in this very, very verbal way. I will be what I will be is God's explanation of what God is. So that, just put that in a parentheses and hold that. So, Lachazot b'noam Yud He Vav He. To gaze, to look at, to b'noam. Noam is beauty or pleasant. Noam, by the way, is a Hebrew name. Some of you might know somebody named Noam. It's a very beautiful, common Hebrew name. I'm not sure it's used for children now, but certainly in Yael's generation.
It is used now, actually. I have a good friend who has, oops, sorry.
A good friend who is...
Her grandson is Noam.
And by the way, it could be a girl's name too in Israel.
Right.
I know I have a very good friend named Noam who's so it can be used for both. More commonly probably for boys, but it's, okay, so B'noam, in the beauty, in the pleasantness, it's a very positive word in the range of what that is. And then ulvaker behechalo. Bikur cholim, you've heard of, some of you, I'm sure. Bikur cholim is to visit the sick. Livaker is to visit or to, here they use the verb frequent. It's interesting to livaker. So u, the first letter there is and or some kind of conjunctive. Li is an infinitive. To vaker behechalo, in his hechal. A hechal is a palace or a large, they're defining it here as temple. And notice the translator for this sentence has the capital H for his, to make sure you understand the reference here is not to anybody's temple or to anybody's palace or to anybody's castle. The capital H means some kind of God, so they're referring back to God. All right, I'm going to stop there because this is such a famous verse. I want to see if anybody has any thoughts or comments or questions or reactions. And what does Beit Yud He Vav He mean to you? The house, to go into the house of the Lord. How do you make that make meaning for you?
Okay,
What does this verse mean?
I'm monitoring hands. Please. Okay, Shep.
Nothing special, but Noam reminds me of Noam Chomsky. There's an American with that name. And what you said, Rabbi, about I am what I am, I think that comes from the burning bush scene, right? In the movie.
In the movie?
in the Bible.
Yes.
Based on the movie.
Yael Bat Chava.
So I'm reminded of Adol Olam, where we say Vehu Haya, Vehu Hoveh.
Excellent.
So 3 ways to say to be. And also, Rabbi, when you were away and we were reading the Psalms quickly, I've been struck really by something that Cantor Nimi did with Yud Hey Vav Hey, reading it as Havaya, and many of us were reading Yud Hey Vav Hey inverted as Havaya, which is really
interesting.
Being. So I'm really struck by that.
Which is really what? Which is what?
Being.
Being, yes. Yeah, which goes back to the Asher Ehyeh. It's about it's not a, that's why the Jewish names for God are so much more profound than the word G-O-D, which gives immediate, and also I'll keep repeating it, G-O-D comes from 19th century German language and German study of religion.
Stacy Harris. Unmute yourself.
Okay, they're entitled to unmute, Rabbi. We're good. Whenever I see that part well, me, it's dwell in the house of Hashem forever. And sometimes it feels comforting, and sometimes it feels scary, like it's an out-of-body experience. That's how I feel.
Good, thanks. Well, what would it mean to want this? What is yearning about this? And how does it make it, what does it mean? So let's see if there are other comments. We're going to get back to it as we look at all different translations, but I wanted to give some time to see if...
Zarkov.
Baveit Adonai means to me, with the diaspora, we're all over. It's no longer just the temple. To me, it's to know the presence of God, not any specific house, but just to have Yud Hey Vav Hey, Adonai Hashem's presence in my life. That's what I'm looking for. That's the one thing I ask for.
Right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Randy.
Sarah Sloan.
The proximity of Noam to Beit Adonai makes me think of a gauzy blanket that has sort of a peaceful veil over God's house. It's an image not unlike a child's bedtime toy. It's something that's there to cling to and to comfort.
Beautiful. So it's very comforting to you.
Very much so.
We yearn for that, right? Wouldn't it be beautiful to yearn for that? Because we don't always feel it. We yearn for it.
It's the one phrase in this that I can cling to when I'm furious at everything else. This one, the yearning for a peaceful place near God, whatever God is.
Lori Spear.
I think Randy and Sarah came really close to what I'm feeling. When I read this, I'm thinking about how do I create some kind of bubble or shelter or canopy that I can take with me throughout the day, so that no matter where I go, I can feel I'm in the presence and under the shelter of the temple of God.
Beautiful.
Michael Goldstein.
Yes, I'm very literal here. It says, one thing I ask, only do I seek, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and to frequent his temple. I hate to say this, but I think that there's an instruction there to build a synagogue, and that that's what has been handed down through the ages. We all contribute to an institution where we can pray together collectively in a synagogue. That's what I think.
So this should have been our tagline for the capital campaign.
Saul.
So in light of Rabbi Moskowitz's teaching yesterday, that we should try to feel that God is watching over us. And so Beveit Hashem, to me, is to try to act all the time so that God will watch over me. And that, so that unlike in other Psalms where the psalmist says, you're not helping me, you're not here, you closed yourself away. Well, it's a two-way street here, that I want to be so that God will watch over me.
So there's agency you have. In other words, you have to enter.
Yes.
You have to kind of, yeah, beautiful.
Ellen Poster.
So I think for me, it means that Hashem is present when there are people seeking Hashem together. So I view this class as being that house.
Beautiful.
Sherry Dratfield.
Hi, it's Simon. I look at two things. First of all, frequent his temple or be in his temple. A presence that is everywhere and nowhere. The presence, the temple can't be a place, it has to be everywhere. And the other concept is that we talked about earlier, that of the divine being a verb rather than a noun.
Right.
Brings me to the idea that to frequent his temple really means to live and to think in a way that is concordant with the divine, and be in concordance with the divine. And if I do that, then I am in, quote, his temple.
That's beautiful, Simon. I think which speaks to the issue which I've discussed at other times, that if we imagine in this ancient language, which is not always easy to access, but I can feel in the group getting more and more flexible about that. If we understand Beveit Yud He Vav He, Havaya, or Beveit of the being, if we want to be in that presence, we have to do what we can to be agents of increasing holiness in the world. And distance from that place is decreasing holiness in the world. And this line for me is very aspirational, right? I want to be part of the increasing of holiness. And that would mean Beveit Yud He Vav He. I want to be able to increase the holiness in the world, not decrease the holiness in the world. And there are so many elements that are decreasing the holiness. How do I attach every day of my life? I don't want to just say, okay, yesterday I did something that brought me closer to Veit Yud He Vav He, and there I'm done. Okay, last week I did it. Every day of my life, I want my life to be full of increasing the holiness, and going back to the first verse, increasing the light. If Yud He Vav He is associated with light, I want to be part of increasing that light. And I don't mean light as in the light from the sun only. I mean that primordial, deeper light.
Rabbi.
Yes.
If I could point out that our synagogue is Beit Simchat Torah, and Beit Knesset is the term for synagogue in modern Hebrew, correct? sort of there. When I was in Jerusalem, I was struggling very strongly with the feeling that many people here have expressed that when we talk about the house of the Lord, it's what I carry with me and the way in which I worship. But then to be there below the Temple Mount, looking up and saying, no, actually there was a physical structure, was a difficult concept for me.
So Judaism has gone through, some call it an evolution, some call it a natural progression that students of religion talk about in most religions, which is early religions tend to focus on a particular place in which God is present, whether it's mountains in some religions or rivers in other religions, and those places are given great holiness. And so Judaism of ancient biblical religion associated a mountain, Mount Moriah, and a temple and a place. And as religion evolved, which coincidentally or not coincidentally coincided with our not having access to a physical space, religion evolved to understand God's presence as not being limited to that one space. So Shabbat and the observance of mitzvot became more important than the sacrificial religion of the Bible, where you had to go to a specific place. And there's a lot written about this. What does that evolution mean? So we could argue, well, it's only because we were sent into diaspora, and so Judaism had to develop a religion that was portable, so to speak. And we talk about a mikdash me'at in rabbinic Judaism. Mikdash is the temple, or the temple that was there, but a mikdash me'at is our home. We're told that our homes are a little temple, that we have to create holiness on our Shabbos tables and in our homes, and every place we live can be a place of holiness. And the Baal Shem Tov famously said, God is found in everything. Malo chol haaretz kavodo, the sentence that we recite in many different places, Malo chol haaretz kavodo. The entire earth is filled with God's presence. It's not just on a mountain, in one mountain on top of Jerusalem. Many people have argued that when the temple was destroyed, the rabbis could have said, okay, we don't have access to the temple in Jerusalem, so let's go back to what we did before Jerusalem and have sacrifices in other locations. There's no reason they couldn't have done that if they wanted that. But many people point out that there was an evolution away from this very specifically located geographical location to the Malo chol haaretz kavodo, to the sense that God is found everywhere, and it's our job to build spaces and to infuse every space we're in with holiness. And we're told, and it's used a lot in the story of the burning bush, that Moses is told famously to take off his shoes because the ground on which you stand is sacred ground. So the rabbis ask, hold on, the grammar is a little bit confusing there. Is Moses standing on sacred ground and that's why he has to take off his shoes? Or is any ground that Moses is standing on, because it's Moses standing there, does that make it sacred ground? And the idea is, and this debate is around, wherever we can be, it can be sacred ground. It's up to us to create that. And I think that this is a lot of what this verse is about. And it's about that transition from a place where there was one physical location to create a sense of the parallelism here between Beveit Yud Hey Vav Hey, which is house of, and Behei Chalo, in his or in their, that's translated here as temple, but Heichal is a palace or a grand space, I think is also functions as a metaphor.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Wait.
Is there a list?
We
You
have
raise your
15
hand.
people with their hands up.
Okay,
Linda,
but
you have to raise your hand and Harold will call on you.
So Rabbi, tell me what you'd like to do. We have 15 people with their hand up, and Renee would like to make a comment. Or
Okay,
we
well, let's have Renee first, and then let's take some comments, and then we'll go till quarter of, and then we'll do more comments tomorrow.
Great.
I just feel I always have this struggle in me between the mitzvot בין אדם למקום ובין אדם לחברו, like between me and God and between me and my fellow people. And the truth is that what's more important to me is the relationship between people and not so much that's my own feeling.
Yeah.
So when I look at the verse, I try to dissect it, and I feel, okay, if I live in the house of the Lord, to gaze upon the beauty. What is the beauty? Is the diversity of all the people. And I found that in the temple because, as I think it was Saul who said, that it tells about our synagogue, so where we meet, and this is where I meet, so all the beauty of creation.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful reading of this. And Benoam Yud Hey Vav Hey, that's a gorgeous reading of that. Thank you, Renee. So let's take a few others. We have a little time.
Had her hand up for a long time. Darina. Darina, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yes, so I was first going to say what a few people have already said, that at this stage the house of God is the community rather than the building. And I remember that there's something like that among the Christians too. And it's not new to them. That's how they began. Because they didn't have churches at first. So, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. That's in the Gospel of Matthew.
So I didn't understand everything, Darina, but I think you were talking about the early church.
Yes, I'll copy it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. This is a very big question, and maybe tomorrow morning, because I don't have time to respond to it, the relationship of the early church and the rabbis to the priests. So how about I take that on tomorrow morning first thing, okay? But I'm going to write that down for myself to remember, because it's too big for me to dive into right now, but I'll start tomorrow morning with that.
Betsy Immershine.
So much of what I wanted to say has been, but there are 2 additional. One is I read this, aside from it giving me so much comfort, I think of the phrase under the shadow of your wing, the same way that gives me so much comfort that anywhere I am, it's more than a bubble, and it's bigger. It's like it spreads throughout everything. But I realized too in reading this, which just got touched on, is that if I think of the house of God, I think of this being a very strong environmental statement in terms of the whole earth was created and is the house of God. And it also kind of pulls me, I'm not seeing the text now, it pulls me into that sense of both agency and responsibility, that this kind of 2-way relationship of this home that was created that will only stay what it is because of also some of our actions.
Beautiful.
So, Rabbi, I suggest we pause there, and tomorrow, Darina gave us the passage, which is Matthew 18:20. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. I have some really quick housekeeping. One is I sent a long email to everybody welcoming the new people, repeating our reading list and how to get the books, talking about high holidays and the Machzor, etc. Please look in your email for that. I sent a separate email to the Psalm 8 authors talking about our recording sessions. Please take a look at that. And I would just ask everyone to take a look at what their own name is here on Zoom, because we really do have a security process where we need a first and last name, not iPad, not Bob's or something like that. And if your name does not have your first and last name, please see if you can change that in your Zoom profile. And with that, Adria would like to play us out with Dan Singer's beautiful Achad Shalti.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Adria. Just gorgeous. And to remind everybody, Cantor Jacob Nimi on Monday will do a session about all different musical settings for Psalm 27. And tomorrow I'll talk about the whole issue about the early church and the rabbis and relationship to the priests, and we'll move on and we'll give a chance for some other comments and try and, if other people have said what you were going to say, you could just say ditto, ditto, and try and look at some of the other translations as we're going through. I'm really thrilled to be doing this study with everybody.
Adria, do you have something?
I just want to, I mean, if you're interested tomorrow, there's actually a Bach cantata whose third movement is dedicated to the first verse of this psalm.
Wow.
Even though it's mixed in with a whole bunch of stuff from Luther.
Yeah.
From Martin Luther, but let me see what I could do with that and maybe find a decent recording of the movement to share on the.
Also post it on everyone's on the Facebook page. You can post something. Always post something.
And make sure if you're new, you've given Harold your email address if you want to be on the email list for everything.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow. The room will stay open for a few minutes.